You see, we often tremble at the idea of separation, as if it's a sort of death, a cruel ending. But what if I told you it's not the end at all? What if separation is simply the universe rearranging itself, preparing you for a new dynamic? We are conditioned to cling to people, to stories, to identities, as if they were meant to last forever. An invitation to come home to yourself. We often imagine separation as a kind of death, a loss, an ending. And indeed, in a sense, it is. It's the end of a particular form, a way of being, a connection, a chapter in the vast unfolding novel of your existence. But what we rarely stop to see is that in this so-called ending lies the secret doorway to transformation. You see, life, in its essence, is not a straight line. It's a spiral. It loops back and around, but never returns to quite the same place. And every time something falls away, be it a person, a role, or even a belief, it's not just leaving, it's making space. The pain of separation, then, is not the universe hurting you. It's the tension of growth pressing against the shell of what you once were. Look at nature. She is a master of this truth. The tree does not cling to last autumn's leaves. When the season changes, the leaves fall, not as a tragedy, but as part of the sacred rhythm. And from that fall, from the nakedness of winter, comes the spring. And so it is with you. When someone walks away, when life pries something from your grip, when you find yourself sitting alone in a silence that once was filled with sound, don't rush to fill the void. Don't mistake absence for emptiness. That space is where transformation begins. The caterpillar does not become a butterfly by clinging to its form. It dissolves fully. It gives up what it was to become what it is meant to be. We resist that. We want change without the chaos, evolution without the shedding, healing without the hurt. But that's not how life works. The pain you feel in separation is not a punishment. It's the alchemy of growth. It's your soul rearranging itself into something new. Of course, the mind rebels. The ego wants control. It says, why did they leave? Or why now? Or what's wrong with me? But these questions are rooted in the illusion that life is supposed to be stable, that once something feels good, it must stay forever. And yet, if everything stayed the same, we would never awaken. We'd never stretch or break or rise. The truth is, separation is one of life's most misunderstood blessings. It's an initiation, a rite of passage. It strips away the false and leaves you with the raw material of who you are. And in that rawness, that quiet aftermath, a deeper version of you begins to emerge. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. You remember your own voice. You notice the sunlight in ways you'd forgotten. And you realize that you were never truly broken, just breaking open. So if you're standing in the ashes of something that once was, don't despair. Take a breath. Look around. What seems like ruin may just be the fertile soil for your rebirth. Allow yourself to grieve, yes, but also allow yourself to wonder, what is this clearing trying to show me? What part of me was waiting to be born through this? You were not meant to remain the same. Life is not interested in your comfort. It is invested in your becoming. And every separation is a sacred teacher pointing you toward that truth. Not the end, but the unfolding. Not the breaking, but the becoming. So the next time you find yourself alone, remember, you are not falling apart. You are falling into place. We suffer not because things end, but because we believe they shouldn't. This right here is the great trick, the illusion we've all bought into. The idea that if we love deeply enough, work hard enough, hope honestly enough, somehow life will make an exception for us, that the people we care about will stay, that the things we build will last, that the beautiful moments will stretch themselves into eternity. And you see, this is not how reality works. Life is a dance of flux and flow, of coming and going. Nothing in the natural world clings. The river does not try to hold its water. The sky lets go of every cloud. And yet we humans grip so tightly to everything, as if permanence were our birthright. The mind, however, rebels against this truth. It wants to freeze time. It creates fantasies of always and never, forgetting that these are just ideas, concepts, not conditions of reality. And so when life inevitably changes, as it always does, we suffer, not because of the change itself, but because we expected it not to. We say, this shouldn't be happening. And in doing so, we create resistance. And resistance is where suffering breathes. What do we do with this truth? We wake up. We stop clinging. We begin to see life not as a series of possessions to be kept, but as a stream to be moved through. When we understand that everything is changing, always changing, we stop demanding that life give us guarantees, and in that surrender, a strange peace arises. We begin to cherish what's here now, without needing to imprison it in some future fantasy. You see, nothing truly belongs to you. Not your partner, not your youth, not even your name. These are garments you wear for a while, beautiful garments, but they are borrowed. Life will ask for them back, and that's okay. Because what's real, what's you, is not the form, but the awareness that moves through it all, the witness, the space in which all of this appears and disappears, the space in which all of this appears and disappears. So the next time something leaves, a person, a job, a season of your life, let it go with grace. Don't clutch. Bow to it, thank it for what it gave you, and then turn toward what's coming with open arms, knowing that the river is still flowing, you're still here, and the moment you're in, fleeting as it may be, is enough, more than enough, because it's real and because there is something deeply misunderstood in our culture, this fear of being alone. We treat solitude as if it were a punishment, a deficiency to be corrected. We fill our calendars, our phones, our ears, our thoughts with noise because silence terrifies us. But silence, my friend, is not empty. It is full, brimming in fact. It is the space in which the soul begins to speak. You see, most people aren't truly afraid of being alone. They are afraid of meeting themselves in the absence of distraction. Because when the music stops, when the room clears, when the messages stop coming in, what remains is you, raw, unfiltered, and perhaps a bit unfamiliar, but in that very unfamiliarity lies the treasure. Solitude is not isolation. Isolation is when you are cut off from life, from love, from meaning. Solitude is something entirely different. It is communion with the self. It is the sacred return to your own essence. It is the temple where you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And yes, it often arrives wrapped in grief. It shows up after the breakup, after the job ends, after the noise fades. But that's only because solitude is usually what we run from, until life in its mercy removes all escape routes. And what do you find there when all else falls away? First, perhaps the echoes of your own pain, the ache of abandonment, the hunger for approval, the noise of regrets playing on repeat. Let it come, let it all come, because beneath those waves is something deeper, still, alive, watching. That presence, your true self, has been there the whole time, waiting patiently for you to notice. It is in solitude that you begin to feel the rhythm of your own nature again. You wake with the sun because it feels right, not because the world demands it. You sit with your thoughts and realize that most of them are just weather, passing clouds, not commands. You walk slower. You listen better. You start to remember the simple joys, the warmth of tea, the breath in your chest, the sky shifting through colors like a silent symphony. And in these small moments, you find a kind of wealth that no crowd could ever give you. The paradox, of course, is that only once you've truly embraced solitude can you connect authentically with others. Until then, every relationship is a grasping, a search for something to fill the void you have not yet sat with. But when you've touched your own stillness, when you've bathed in your own presence, you no longer seek people out of lack. You meet them from fullness, and this changes everything. In solitude you come home, not to a place but to a presence, to the awareness that you are enough, not because someone else says so, but because you exist. And existence, this breath, this heartbeat, this moment, is miraculous. So the next time life leads you into a season of separation, do not rush to escape it. Sit with it. Listen. Let the silence stretch. Let the empty room become a sanctuary. For in that space the sacred unfolds. And you will see, perhaps for the first time, that you are not alone at all. You are with yourself. And that is a meeting worth having. It is a strange thing, isn't it? How only when something leaves do we truly begin to see it. How the absence of a sound reveals the silence. How darkness allows us to notice the stars. This is the great dance of opposites, the way life hides its deepest truths in contrast. And it is loss, more often than not, that sharpens our vision. When we are immersed in something, love, routine, comfort, we rarely stop to examine it. We move through it as fish move through water, unaware of the miracle in which we are suspended. But take it away and suddenly the very air seems different. The mind becomes alert, the heart wakes up. In the clearing left by loss, clarity rushes in like wind through an open window. We are conditioned to fear loss, to see it as the enemy, as a thief in the night. But loss is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal, to peel back the curtain, to strip away the layers of assumption and show you what truly matters. You may not welcome it, but if you are brave enough to sit with it, you'll begin to see its wisdom. Consider how clearly we remember the words someone said after they've gone. How their laughter, once taken for granted, now echoes in the quiet with such vivid beauty it brings tears to our eyes. Or how the simplest moments, a shared glance, a hand on your shoulder, become sacred memories only after they've passed. This is not a failure of attention. This is the rhythm of life. Presence reveals itself in absence, in the moments after a great change, after a breakup, a death, a sudden goodbye. The mind is stripped bare. There's nothing left to distract us. And so we begin to see not just what we've lost, but what we've learned. Perhaps we see the ways we gave too much of ourselves, or not enough. Perhaps we recognize the patterns that kept repeating. Perhaps we see that we are stronger than we believed, softer than we showed, wiser than we knew. Clarity doesn't always arrive gently, but it arrives. Loss also teaches us about value. You begin to understand that time is not something to be spent carelessly, that words matter, that attention is love. When you've held something dear and watched it vanish, you are no longer fooled by illusions. You see through the surface. You stop chasing what is shiny and start honoring what is real. And here is the curious thing. In the midst of this revelation, you are not weakened. You are refined, like gold in the fire, like glass shaped by heat. The pain of loss, when not resisted, becomes a kind of lens, a tool that focuses your inner sight. You become more aware, more alive, more honest, not in spite of your suffering, but because of it. Life will not spare you from loss. That is not its nature. But it will offer you the gift of clarity if you are willing to receive it. So when something falls away, resist the urge to cover the wound too quickly. Let it breathe. Let it teach. You may find in time that what you feared was a breaking was really a polishing, a way for the light to enter more freely. You do not need to fear the dark. It is only in the dark that the stars become visible, and in the space left behind by what was, a new vision is waiting to be born. All you need to do is see. Separation, as we tend to experience it, feels final. It feels like a door closing, a bridge burning, a thread being cut. But this is a trick of the senses, a misunderstanding born of appearances. Because in truth, nothing is ever truly separate, not in this universe, not in this dance of existence. The idea that we are isolated islands drifting alone across an empty sea is perhaps the greatest illusion of all. And it is that illusion that causes us the most suffering. You see, we think in lines and edges. This is me, and that is you. This is mine, and that is gone. But life does not move in lines. It moves in circles, in spirals, in patterns that overlap and intertwine. When someone leaves your life, they don't disappear, they echo, they resonate. They live on in gestures, in dreams, in the rhythm of your thoughts. Their voice becomes part of your inner voice. Their presence becomes folded into the way you now walk through the world. You might remember the way they laughed when the sun hit just right, and without realizing it, you smile. You hear a song, and suddenly their memory is sitting beside you. This isn't just sentimentality, it's reality. Everything we touch, everyone we connect with, changes us. We absorb them, and they absorb us, and those energetic fingerprints do not vanish. They remain, not as ghosts, but as living imprints within our consciousness. Think of how waves interact. One wave crashes into another, and both are changed. They move apart, yes, but they carry something of each other forward. That's what human connection is like. That's what love is, a mixing, a merging, a recognition of the shared fabric beneath our seeming separateness. And perhaps, if we look closely, we can begin to see that the pain we feel in separation is not because we've truly been abandoned, but because something deep inside us remembers the truth, that we are not meant to be separate, not really, not in the way we often believe. The soul knows its unity. It knows that beneath names and forms and stories, there is one great being, breathing through all of us, wearing different faces, speaking with different tongues, but all returning to the same source. Even science begins to whisper what mystics have long shouted, that we are made of stardust, of particles passed from ancient stars, recycled endlessly through trees, oceans, animals, and human hearts. You breathe the air someone else once breathed. You speak the words someone else once thought. You carry the love someone else once gave. Nothing is lost, nothing is separate. It only changes form. So when a person walks out of your life, or when a moment passes that you wish could stay forever, don't believe the story that it is truly gone. Instead, ask yourself, where does it now live within me? What has it awakened? What has it planted? The people who have come and gone, those you've loved, those you've lost, they are not outside of you. They are part of the constellation that makes up your inner sky. And you are a star in theirs, whether you know it or not. The connection never truly ends. It only changes shape. And so, the next time you feel alone, remember this. You are not a solitary being. You are a thread in the great tapestry of life, and every thread you've touched still weaves through you. There is no real separation, only transformation, only movement, only the great unfolding. And through that unfolding, we are always connected. We live in a world that is constantly asking us to feel more, care more, be more connected. We're told that empathy is virtue, that emotional depth is a sign of a rich inner life. And while there is truth in that, there comes a moment, subtle perhaps, quiet, when you realize that your peace is not found in the noise of attachment, but in the silence that follows detachment. Not the cold kind of detachment, the one that numbs and denies, but a gentle stepping back, a soft release, like the leaf that falls from the tree not out of rejection, but because the season has changed. You do not have to carry every weight that is handed to you. Not every feeling is yours to feel. Not every fire is yours to put out. We confuse entanglement with connection. We think that to love we must suffer, that to care we must bleed. But what if love, true love, is simply presence without possession, to stand near another soul without trying to mold, fix, or hold? What if the deepest act of compassion is to honor another's journey without letting it drown yours? Imagine the stillness of a lake. It reflects the world around it, but it is not disturbed by it. The winds may come, the storms may stir, but the lake remains itself. To be emotionally detached is not to be indifferent. It is to recognize that clinging to every ripple of emotion is like trying to hold the wind in your hands. It will exhaust you, it will confuse you, and it will never bring you peace. There are times when silence is wiser than speaking, when stepping back is braver than stepping forward, when letting go is more loving than holding on. You don't always have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your boundaries. The moon never apologizes for being full one night and a sliver the next. It simply is, and that is enough. Peace, you see, isn't something you chase. It's what remains when the chasing ends. When you no longer feel the need to grasp, prove, or perform. When you can sit with the discomfort of not knowing, not fixing, not reacting, and still be whole. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. People hear the word detachment and they immediately associate it with coldness, apathy, or the absence of care. But this misunderstanding arises because we live in a culture that glorifies constant emotional engagement. We're taught that to be a good person, a compassionate person, we must constantly immerse ourselves in the emotional tides of others. That love means worry, that care means sacrifice, and that empathy means suffering alongside someone. But there is a subtle distinction that, once understood, shifts everything. Detachment is not the opposite of love. It is, in many ways, the deepest expression of love one can offer to oneself and to others. To be emotionally detached is to step back, not to avoid feeling, but to observe feeling. It is the quiet power of being present without being overwhelmed. It is the wisdom of knowing that your peace does not have to drown just because someone near you is in a storm. The mind becomes clearer when it is not constantly hijacked by emotional chaos. You begin to see situations for what they truly are, not for what your conditioned responses want them to be. You begin to make decisions from a place of clarity instead of reaction. When you are always plugged into the emotions of others, it becomes difficult to hear your own inner voice. You become a reflection of their energy rather than a steward of your own. Detachment offers a path back to your center. It lets you feel your own feelings more purely because they are no longer entangled with the emotional noise of everything and everyone around you. Think of detachment as space. Imagine a dancer moving through a room. If the room is cluttered, they cannot move freely. Their expression is limited by obstacles. But when the room is spacious, they can flow, create, and move with ease. Emotional detachment clears the room. It removes the unnecessary furniture of over-involvement, of emotional obligation, of guilt-driven interaction. And in that space you are free to move, breathe, and be. It's not that you stop caring. In fact, with detachment, your care becomes more refined, more intentional. Instead of reacting out of panic or pressure, you begin to act from a deeper well of calm. When someone comes to you with their pain, you do not need to drown in it to prove you're listening. You can hold space for them, offer your presence, and still remain rooted. Because when your roots are deep, the winds of other people's emotions do not uproot you. You become like a tree, still, steady, silently strong. The reason detachment brings peace is because it removes the constant emotional negotiation that so often defines human interaction. When you're emotionally entangled, every look, every word, every silence becomes a potential trigger. You read into things. You worry about how others feel, what they're thinking, what they need from you, and whether you're giving enough. You become a servant to the moods of others. But with detachment, you begin to realize that most of what people express isn't about you at all. It's their own story, their own filter, their own world of pain or joy playing itself out. And when you stop taking everything personally, the pressure lifts. You no longer seek validation in other people's reactions. You no longer feel the need to constantly explain yourself. You start to release the compulsion to be understood. You simply exist in the truth of your being, and you let others exist in theirs. This is not separation, it's harmony. Because what creates conflict is the desperate desire to be seen a certain way, to have others act a certain way, to control outcomes through emotional leverage. But when you're detached, you release the illusion of control. And that, paradoxically, gives you back your freedom. There is also a profound gentleness that comes with detachment. You stop forcing things, you stop clinging, you stop the inner tug of war that insists things must go a particular way to make you feel safe. You stop needing everyone to behave a certain way so you can stay calm. Instead, you create your calm from within. You anchor into yourself, not into the ever-changing tides of circumstance. And so even when things shift, even when people leave or disappoint or change, you are not shattered. You are not lost, because your peace was never built on them. It was born from the quiet decision to no longer make your emotional state dependent on the unpredictable weather of the world. Detachment is also the moment when you stop seeking constant emotional highs. You no longer need drama to feel alive, or emotional chaos to feel connected. You start to find beauty in the stillness. You start to enjoy the subtle things, the quiet moments, the deep breaths, the spaces in between words. You stop chasing the emotional roller coaster and start appreciating the calm walk through the forest of your own being. You become a soft place for others to land. You become a relaxed manager. You become a fleshly potentiality. If you become a dependable, detachable force of nature, you become a soft place for others to land, because you are no longer trying to trace your own to anything other than you offer love without condition, and that love is clean, unburdened, and peaceful. To detach emotionally is to reclaim your power. It is to remember that while you may walk alongside others, your path is yours. That while you may care deeply, you are not required to suffer endlessly. That peace is not found in the approval of others, but in the quiet sanctuary within you. And in that still, sacred place, you begin to understand what true emotional freedom feels like. There's a deep, unspoken belief woven into the fabric of many lives. The idea that to be a good person, to be loving or loyal, means to feel everything, to carry everything, and to be everything for everyone. It's the silent pressure that says if someone is in pain, you must hurt too. If someone is angry, you must absorb it. If someone is lost, you must drop everything and go searching with them. And if you don't, somehow you're selfish. But the truth, quietly and steadily, is this: not every emotion is yours to feel, and not every burden is yours to carry. The world is full of energies. Emotions are like invisible threads, some soft, some tangled, some sharp. People throw these threads at each other, often unconsciously, hoping someone will catch them, hold them, maybe even untangle them. But just because someone offers you their pain doesn't mean you have to keep it. Just because someone vents their frustration in your direction doesn't mean you're responsible for soothing it. The mere presence of emotion does not automatically place an obligation on you to respond. This doesn't mean becoming uncaring. It means becoming discerning. There's a difference between compassion and overextension, between helping and self-abandonment. Sometimes we confuse emotional involvement with love, but true love doesn't always mean stepping into the emotional mud with someone. Sometimes it means holding your clarity so they can find their way out. It means refusing to lose yourself every time someone else loses their grip. You can still be present, still care, still offer warmth, but from a place that's anchored, not entangled. There's also a subtle addiction in many of us, the addiction to emotional responsibility. But when we carry that into adulthood, it becomes a heavy burden, silently shaping our relationships, distorting our sense of self, and leaving us emotionally exhausted. We start taking on feelings that aren't ours and internalizing pain that doesn't belong to us. You're not required to bleed every time someone else gets cut. You are not a container for everyone's chaos. If someone is constantly angry, bitter, anxious, or wounded, and they never take responsibility for healing that, you don't have to become the emotional dumping ground. You can listen with empathy, but you can also choose not to absorb. This is where your peace lives. Not in avoidance, but in boundaries. The ability to say, I hear you, I see you, but I will not lose myself in your storm. It's an internal posture, a quiet stance of self-honoring. When someone around you is erupting with emotion, anger, fear, insecurity, you learn to pause and ask, is this mine? Does this feeling originate from within me, or am I being pulled into something that isn't mine to fix? That moment of awareness is everything. It gives you the freedom to choose, and in that choice, you reclaim your peace. There's a certain kind of strength that emerges when you stop over-identifying with every emotional signal in the room. You realize you don't have to match someone's energy just because it's loud. You don't have to spiral just because they are. You can remain steady, you can remain you, and that steadiness isn't indifference. It's maturity. It's the maturity of knowing that real support doesn't always look like emotional enmeshment. Sometimes it's just calm presence, just quiet space. You can tell when something truly needs your attention and when you've simply been caught in someone else's emotional wave. Letting go of the belief that you must feel everything is one of the most liberating acts of self-love. You are not responsible for how others process their emotions. You are not responsible for their growth, their awakening, their inner balance. That is their journey, and you have your own. When you stay in your own emotional lane, something beautiful happens. You begin to experience life more fully. Your joy becomes more vibrant because it isn't diluted by everyone else's pain. Your sadness becomes more meaningful because it's truly yours, not a reflection of someone else's distress. Your emotions become authentic, not inherited. People often say, "But if I don't feel it for them, who will?" As if your suffering is the price of your love. But love doesn't require suffering. Love is not about sacrificing your well-being to prove your loyalty. Real love includes you. It includes your emotional health, your boundaries, your peace. If your love for others excludes yourself, it's not whole. It's self-erasure in disguise. Let others have their feelings. Let them process, unravel, explode, rebuild. You can witness it all without becoming entangled. You can hold space without being the space. You can be kind without being a martyr. The sun doesn't stop shining just because the sky is full of clouds. It continues to radiate from behind the veil, waiting patiently for the storm to pass. You can do the same. You can be light, quiet, steady, untangled. And in that state, your presence becomes a gift, not because you carry everything for others, but because you don't. Because you model a new way of being, one where peace is not sacrificed at the altar of emotional obligation, one where you are whole within yourself, one where love is offered freely, not out of duty, but out of truth. Not every emotion is yours to feel, not every burden is yours to carry, and the moment you begin to honor that, you start walking the path of freedom. You begin to live from your center, unburdened, unapologetic. There comes a point when we realize that the constant chasing of validation from others, of needing to be understood, accepted, or emotionally met, becomes a kind of suffering in itself. It is subtle at first. We convince ourselves that if we just explain things the right way, if we open our hearts enough, if we're patient and kind, others will eventually meet us at the same emotional depth. We hold space, we give benefit after benefit of the doubt. But slowly, without noticing, we begin to shrink ourselves just to maintain connection. And it's here, in this quiet collapse of the self, that emotional detachment becomes not coldness, but clarity. Emotional detachment is not about withdrawing love. It is about withdrawing from illusion. The illusion that others will change if you just love them harder. The illusion that they will suddenly see you, hear you, value you, simply because you showed them your heart. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they can't. And waiting for someone else to meet you emotionally can become a form of emotional starvation. We often think emotional connection is mutual, that if we're open, vulnerable, and emotionally present, others will mirror that back. But emotional availability is not contagious. You can model openness all you want and still find yourself talking to someone who is emotionally guarded, unavailable, dismissive, or unaware. You can give your truth and receive silence. You can offer understanding and meet deflection. And what we do next, right in that moment, defines whether we stay in emotional peace or enter emotional chaos. Many of us are addicted to emotional potential. We see the glimpses, the flashes of vulnerability, the moments when someone shows a bit of their depth, and we latch on, we hope, we believe. We replay those moments like spiritual breadcrumbs, convincing ourselves that if we stay a little longer, if we love a little more, they'll finally open fully. But most of the time, they don't. Not because they're bad people, but because emotional intimacy requires a kind of self-awareness, a kind of inner work that not everyone is ready to do. And your job is not to wait at the door of someone else's awakening. Detaching, then, becomes necessary. Not because you don't care, but because you do. You care about your energy. You care about your growth. You care about your peace. You begin to realize that your emotional availability is not something to be wasted. It is not something to be thrown into a well that only echoes back silence. Your depth is not a burden, but it becomes one when it is constantly misunderstood or unseen. We think emotional connection has to be earned, that if we just say the right things, soften in the right ways, time things perfectly, the other person will magically respond. But connection isn't about effort. It's about resonance. It's about alignment. You don't force someone to emotionally meet you. You recognize whether they can or can't. And you respond accordingly. His detachment says, I see that you're not there, and that's okay, but I won't keep handing my heart to someone who doesn't know how to hold it. Emotional detachment isn't closing yourself off. It's refusing to chase what isn't there. It's the brave step away from the illusion that your worth is tied to someone else's capacity to see it. You begin to feel the heaviness of explaining yourself repeatedly. You notice the exhaustion of being the emotional initiator in every interaction. You become aware of how much energy it takes to keep trying to maintain emotional intimacy with someone who doesn't even notice when you pull away. And then comes a moment of stillness, a moment when you no longer feel the urgency to be understood, when you no longer need their emotional presence to validate your own. You stop knocking on closed doors. You stop rehearsing your truth in your head, hoping that maybe this time they'll listen. You start offering that presence to yourself, that understanding to yourself, that attention, that space, that softness to your own inner world. It's a strange kind of peace at first. It feels unfamiliar, like silence after years of noise, like breathing after holding your breath, but it grows. Slowly, steadily, it grows every time you feel the pull to explain yourself and choose not to. Every time you see someone deflecting emotion and you no longer feel the need to fix it. Every time you feel unseen and remind yourself that you are not invisible. You are simply in the wrong room. We learn that not every relationship has to be emotionally deep, that not everyone we love will meet us emotionally, and that's okay. We stop demanding water from wells that have run dry. We stop seeing emotional connection as something to force, and instead begin to honor the quiet truth of what's really there. Sometimes emotional detachment means allowing space to see clearly. When we are too emotionally enmeshed, we confuse projection for connection. We think we're bonding with someone when really we're just pouring our unspoken needs into them, hoping they'll finally quench a thirst that started long ago. But when we step back, when we emotionally detach, we begin to see what's actually happening. We see what's being said, what's being withheld, what patterns are playing out. And we make decisions from clarity, not from craving. Detachment gives us that clarity. It removes the fog of expectation, of hope tangled with need. And in that clarity we find choice again. The choice to stay or walk away, the choice to speak or stay silent, the choice to be emotionally present or emotionally distant. And every time we make that choice from within rather than from external pressure, we reclaim our power. It takes courage to emotionally distant. And every time we make that choice from within rather than from external pressure, we reclaim our power. It takes courage to emotionally detach, to not make excuses for someone's lack of presence, to not blame yourself for their inability to meet you, to stop performing emotional labor in a relationship that is not reciprocal. But it's in that courage that you begin to heal. You begin to realize that the emotional fulfillment you were chasing in others was always something you could give yourself. You stop romanticizing emotional struggle. You stop idolizing the potential of connection. You begin to seek alignment. Not chemistry, not attachment, not history, but true emotional reciprocity. You learn to walk away, not out of spite, not out of coldness, but out of deep reverence for your emotional well-being. You understand now that waiting for emotional presence from someone who is unavailable is a form of self-abandonment. And you choose not to do that anymore. You choose to show up for yourself, to hold your own depth, to meet your own vulnerability. And from that place, you no longer settle for less. You no longer feel desperate to be emotionally understood, because you become the one who understands you, because you've become the one who understands you. And in that understanding, you find peace. There is a subtle but profound shift that occurs when one begins to see attachment, not as a form of love, but as a form of fear. We are taught from a young age that to love someone is to hold on, to tether ourselves to them, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We cling because we care. We worry because we love. But underneath the surface, much of what we call attachment is the fear of being alone, the fear of letting go, the fear of losing identity in the absence of another. Attachment often masquerades as devotion, but it is not the same. True devotion is free. It allows, it breeds. It respects the autonomy of the other. Attachment constricts, it grips. It says, you must stay so that I can feel whole. And in that very statement is the root of suffering, placing your wholeness in something that is not you. When we become attached to someone emotionally, we begin to define ourselves through them. Their mood becomes our mood. Their distance becomes our anxiety. Their silence becomes our self-doubt. We lose our center, not because they took it, but because we handed it over in hopes that they would take care of it, that nobody else can hold your center for you. It is yours and yours alone. Letting go of emotional attachment is not about becoming indifferent. It's about becoming aware of how we create stories around people, how we imagine they should be, how we expect them to fill emotional roles they never agreed to play. It's about seeing how we project our inner world onto them, hoping they will carry what we have not yet learned to hold. We say we are hurt by others, but more often than not we are hurt by our own expectations. We expected them to respond, to stay, to understand, to care in the exact way we needed. And when they didn't, we crumbled, not because they failed us, but because we had built a part of our emotional foundation on their behavior. That is a fragility of attachment. Your peace becomes dependent on something you cannot control. In emotional detachment, you begin to reclaim that control, not in the sense of manipulating people or withdrawing affection, but in the sense of not needing others to behave a certain way for you to remain at peace. You begin to hold your own emotions gently without outsourcing them to someone else's presence or action. You learn to witness your feelings without letting them dictate your worth. Many people fear that detaching emotionally means losing their capacity to love. But the opposite is true. Detachment is the ground from which true love grows. Because love, when freed from attachment, is no longer possessive. It doesn't say you belong to me. It says I see you and I honor your freedom. It doesn't need constant validation or proof. It trusts, it flows, it lets be. You start to notice that when you are no longer attached, you stop trying to change people. You no longer need to fix them, convince them, or interpret their every action through the lens of your needs. You give them back to themselves. And in doing so, you give yourself back to you. That space, that freedom, is where peace